Hello, and I want to welcome you all to the DocuWare webinar on distributing your documents easily from the home office. My name is Christopher Yor, and I'm a professional services engineer here at DocuWare. Like many of you, I'm working from home, and while there are a lot of great things that we're learning about the modern workplace that I hope we can build upon once things get back to normal, there are still several challenges that businesses need to overcome. Perhaps one of the most basic business functions that has been affected by current events is that of distributing physical mailings to individuals stuck working from home. So how do we process mail when no one is in the office? Normally it's straightforward. Mail arrives and is brought by hand to the recipient's desk. However, when the majority or entirety of the company is working from home, we need to get a little creative. Today, we're going to look at a simple mail distribution process that we can implement quickly and easily to keep business moving forward. In order to do this, we will utilize Import, a feature of the DocuWare desktop apps, as well as a simple workflow created in Workflow Designer. First, we must have the mail in order to scan it. Someone will have to physically go and get the mail, unless steps have already been taken to have it forwarded to a dedicated person. One of the nice things about the process that we'll be looking at is that anyone can go and retrieve the mail. And we'll look at how we can accomplish that when we get to the workflow design. Then the user will scan the documents to their desktop. If the user has a local USB scanner attached to their PC, we can scan straight to DocuWare using the Scan app, but for our demonstration purposes here today, we're going to assume that the scanner is networked and configured to scan to the user's file system. Once we have the documents digitized, the user drops the document into a watched import folder on the desktop, which stores the document in the file cabinet, triggering a workflow. Then we have a workflow task that asks the person scanning the document to whom the document should go. Finally, the recipient gets a task to clear their document from the task list. So we're going to switch over now to a VM that I have prepared here. And as you can see, we're logged into the main desktop client, the main web client. And the first thing we're going to need to do is make sure that we have desktop apps installed. Now, any user with any permissions, when they're on the web app, can download and configure them by clicking on the main menu, going to Desktop Apps, then clicking Install. This will start a download, and when run, will allow you to install the desktop apps. Each module has a checkbox that you can select or deselect. Today we're looking at the Import module. I also have Scan installed. And Workflow Designer normally is hidden under this Show Administrative Options link. But for our demonstration here today, we have already installed everything to save time. Once you select the items we need, which would be Import and Workflow Designer, or Scan and Workflow Designer, we click Install, and we follow the prompts through. Once that's complete, we will have a DocuWare desktop link on the main desktop. We'll come back to that in a minute. Back in the web client, we will first need to create an import configuration that will allow us to watch this folder. So once again, we click on the main menu. We click on Configurations. It's the second from the top with the gear icon. That will open a new browser tab. And we're going to select Document Processing. Second row, first column. Now that we're in Document Processing, we're going to click New Configuration. and we'll give it a name. We'll call it mail processing. Now we start off in the source tab, and since we're doing a watched folder configuration, we're going to click on the folder button in the middle towards the top. If we were using a local USB scanner, we would click on scanner and it would function in much the same way. From here, you can leave most of the defaults on this tab as they are. We'll go over to the Target tab. Under Target, we'll want to select File Cabinet as the store target, since we need to trigger a workflow. And then in the drop-down, you select the file cabinet that we want to use. In this case, it's only the one cabinet called Documents, so we'll use that. Now we go over to Processing. This is where we tell the tab what information to store with the document. Here, we're going to go over to Indexing on the right-hand side. We're going to go to Doc Type. We're going to click on the plus. Make sure that we're on a fixed entry. We're going to call this Inbound Mail. We hit OK. And then finally, we go to the Permissions tab. Scroll down to the plus. And we're going to give this to the default organization role. Now this part here is important because the default organization role is a role that's built into DocuWare that has all users in it at all times. What this means is that it will allow any user to use this import configuration and bring in the mail. This is useful if maybe one day Robert has to go get the mail from the office, or maybe the next day Jonathan needs to go and get the mail that's held at the post office, something along those lines. It allows the flexibility that we were speaking about earlier. So we're going to click OK there. And finally, we're going to save. And now that it's saved, which you can tell because it is grayed out and we cannot click it anymore, we can go ahead and close the Configurations tab and minimize the browser. Now, we have the configuration created that tells us how to store the document. Now we need to link that configuration to the user's desktop using the desktop apps. So here we're going to double click on the desktop apps icon on your desktop. And that brings up this screen. You see we have several options here. It starts us off on import. If it doesn't start you on import, go ahead and click that import button on the top. And then under the jobs list, there's going to be a plus icon to create a new import job. We're going to go ahead and click that. And we can give this a name. And for source folder, go ahead and click on the folder icon towards the right of that field. And as you can see, I already have a folder on my desktop called Distribute Mail. So we select it, hit OK. Next, we look at the configuration dropdown, and you can see we have our mail processing configuration that we just created. So we select it. We'll leave the OCR language on its default setting. I personally like to select auto rotate scan PDFs just in case we're looking at a landscape document that gets scanned in incorrectly, or maybe a page got flipped upside down. So once we hit save here, we actually get it started up, and now it is watching that folder. So at this point, anything we drop into that distribute mail folder will automatically be uploaded into DocuWare, but we do need the workflow actually created before we get to that. So we're going to open up Workflow Designer, which is a separate application that you can find in the Start menu. See here, it's in my list of recents. We click the plus icon in the upper left, and that brings us to the Create New Workflow screen. We'll give this a name. Called Mail Distribution. You can select your file cabinet here. Obviously, we have documents selected, but you may need to use the drop-down to select it. And then under the workflow username, I usually like to use the admin account, but you can use any user that would have full rights on the cabinet. Actually, for this workflow, you would only need store rights. My apologies. So once you do that, we're going to click on the Trigger tab in the upper corner on the left. And it's going to say Start New Workflow. By default, it's checked off for new documents. We're going to leave that checked. And we're going to leave the other two checkboxes unchecked. Go down to this condition list and click the plus icon. And our condition is going to be that doc type field that we set in the import configuration. So we're going to select doc type, leave it as equals, and in the field on the right, we're going to type inbound mail. So this will start new workflows for new documents if all of the following conditions are true. Doc type equals inbound mail. It's going to ask for our password authentication here, just to make sure that we can use the user that we selected. We'll hit OK. And this brings us to the main workflow screen. Here we have a couple different areas. On the right, we have the main window here, which shows us the actual design of the workflow as a flow chart. On the left, we have a couple menus, our activities menu, where we can drag these items into the design to get them working. We have a variables menu where we can add the variables we'll need to run the workflow. And this validations menu just lets us know that there's issues preventing us from publishing the workflow right now. So the first thing we'll need to do, we're going to need to set a variable in order to capture and find out who stored the documents, because we want to send the first step of the workflow to the user who scanned it in. So we click Add Variable. We'll call this Store User. Under the Type field, we're going to click the drop-down, and then towards the bottom, under the field header, you'll see User of a Group. Just select that and hit OK. Once we have the store user created and selected, we're going to switch back to the All Activities menu. And we're going to select an Assign Data task and drag that over. We'll call it Get Username. And there's a plus icon to the left where we can add a data assignment. We're going to go ahead and click that. And then under Destination Type, we select Workflow Global Variable. Under the field or variable dropdown, we select Store User. Under Entry Type, we select Index Entry of the document. And under Entry, we go down to store user all the way at the bottom under system fields. Good rule of thumb is that the items on the left is where you're storing it to, and the items on the right are where you're storing it, where you're getting that information from. So we click OK to save the changes and close the dialog. Now we're going to grab the little box under the start activity. We're going to click there and drag down to get username. And after we get the username, the first thing we need to do is find out who the next person to use a task is going to be. And that's where the assign to task comes in. So we're going to drag that from the top of the activities menu down into our workflow. Call it assign to scanner. And we're going to assign the next user for this workflow by variable. So we click the variable button on the left. So we click the variable button on the left, and we select store user variable, and we click OK. And again, we're going to select one of the boxes and drag it down to connect our workflow. It's going to ask you to select a path. Your options are OK or error. Error handling is beyond the scope of this webinar, so we're going to leave it on OK, and we hit the OK button. Now that we have assigned whatever the next task may be to the scanner, we need to create the task itself. And this is kind of the meat and potatoes here. So we'll call this task select send document. We're not going to be stamping these documents today. We're just trying to forward them to the correct people. So we'll uncheck decision can be taken by stamp. Click on the Decisions tab, and then click on the plus tab on the left to add a decision to this task. There's only going to be one decision, and we'll call it Select Recipient. We'll make that the default decision. By checking that default decision box, this decision will automatically open for the user so that they don't actually have to click on the decision. That blank screen before you click on it is useful maybe if you have 2 or 3 decisions that you need to take, but in this case, since it's only the one, we want it to open right away. Then we go over to the dialog tab for the decision, and we're going to go ahead and click on the plus icon and select field. That will add a field to our workflow. We're going to go ahead and call it user. And under the type dropdown, we're going to go ahead and select a user of a group. And we're going to click on the pencil icon and check the required tab because we're going to use this field in our next step. We click on the Assign To tab, and then we click on Assign by Workflow field, and we select the user field that we just created. And we hit OK. Bring our arrow down from the Assign step, hit OK. And finally, we need one final task. Now that the workflow is assigned to the user, the recipient user, we're going to call this one New Mail. And again, there's no decisions really being made per se. So we're going to uncheck decision can be taken by stamp. On this task, we're going to go to the notification tab because we do want to send a notification to the user that they have new scans. So we click on the notification tab, we check the send email button checkbox on the left. And then we're going to click the pencil to alter the subject and body. You can name this whatever you want. And then in the body is much the same way. We click on the pencil icon. Here I want to use a link in order to let the user get to their task list quickly. So I'm going to say please, space. And then on the right side, there's two boxes. One says link to task and link to task list. Select the latter, link to task list, and we're just going to type in click here to title the link, and we're going to hit add. And you see it pastes the information you need for that link into the email body on the left. We're going to hit space, and we're going to say, so it says please click here to view your waiting mail scans. We hit OK, and our mail will now be sent out when the user gets it. We click to the Decisions tab, and we add another decision. And this one is going to be much simpler than the previous one. We're just going to call it Acknowledge. We'll make it the default decision. And since this is really just a task being used to remove the task from the user's workflow list, we can simply hit OK here. We need no fields or dialogues or anything. So we drag our link and drag. And finally, after we've linked send document to new mail, we're going to drag one final link from new mail to end. And as you can see on the bottom left corner, our validations menu no longer shows any errors. It is green, which means we can now save by clicking the save icon, and then publish by clicking the checkbox, the check in the circle right next to the save icon. This will pop up. It says that your error exits are not connected. Since we're not doing that, we're okay to go ahead and click publish. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and let's take a look at some of these documents I have here. We're going to run through the workflow real quick. As you can see here, I do have, let's say this invoice was just scanned in from US Steel. And we also have a letter stating that they want to build a roller coaster and they want to hire us at Peters Engineering. So we're going to go ahead and drop these documents into the folder. And as you can see in the bottom right corner of the desktop apps, it is scanning them, doing the OCR that's required, and it will store them in DocuWare in just a moment. Okay. Looks like they both went through. So we're going to go ahead and click here. And as you see in the tasks button, we have two new tasks for us to look at. So you can see here, we double click this one. So we need to send this document, and we'll say, oh, this is US Steel, this is an invoice. This needs to go to Peggy over in accounting. And we'll hit confirm. And then we have, oh, this is somebody who wants to engage us. Let's talk to Robert over in sales. We'll go ahead and click confirm. Now let's log out, and we'll take a look at Peggy's web client. And as you can see, in her task menu, she has the new mail task. And she opens it, she can look at the document and say, oh, this is an invoice. Let's get this saved correctly. We can make sure that we know that this is an incoming invoice. And we're done. Acknowledge. And then Robert. We'll log in as Robert. And as you can see here, he has his new mail, and he wants to, maybe he wants to print this, and he can print it, or he can change the index entries in any way that he needs to. Let me save it. And he's done with his mail. So as you can see, getting mail from your office doesn't need to be difficult. This is a very simple workflow designed to get even the most basic DocuWare user ready, up and running within 30 minutes to get their system ready to handle the mail coming in. Obviously, there's lots of other things you can do. Workflow Designer is a very powerful tool, but I think this is the best way, the easiest and quickest way to make sure that people can just continue getting done what they need to get done. And with that, I'd like to thank everybody for coming, and I hope that you all learned something today, and I hope you all have a wonderful and safe Tuesday morning. Goodbye.